most of the portfolios we have with the clients are always active. Yeah, and it was very essential that what an investor really is asking is that there are two asks. One is that can you beat the market rate of return, and the second ask is that can you even give me a market rate of return, right? And that's where I think the role of passives come in the portfolio. We have been consciously adding passives into the portfolio of the clients today. Yeah. So I think there is a stage where I think we have reached from the innovators to the early adopters, and the early adopters are essentially the high influential people, the family offices, and of course the government of India is also kind of mandated through the EPF route, to invest into passives. So I think all in all, if you see, there is a lot of traction which is happening with the most influential in the society today, because they understand the importance of passive in the portfolio. And I believe that this is the trigger for the growth what you see today in terms of the numbers. So, starting with the most important thing, if you know which passive fund you have to add, it entirely depends on what is your investment policy and what is the asset allocation. And within the asset allocation, whether you want to include an equity or a debt passive. Okay, so this is the starting point. The second is that between the passives, you also need to look into that how far the passive fund is closer to the underlying index. Okay, so it is basically a tracking error difference, and second is the tracking error percentage. So what we are essentially asking is that the fund manager has to replicate the performance of that particular ETF along with the underlying, and it is very essential that as close as it can be to the index. That is one of the very important criterias for choosing a passive. Second, I would also look at the expense ratio, because the expense ratio will definitely make a difference in the return what you earn. So if you compare four funds and if you look at even the expense ratio of these funds, it does make sense to look at a fund with a lower expense ratio. So I would rather look from these three metrics and ask you to choose a fund. So, firstly, I'm quite impressed because one, the topic itself is such that we are not too sure whether there will be people who would like to attend. Secondly, Cafe Mutual has gone ahead and come out with an event, right? So, I think the conviction of Cafe Mutual is outstanding, especially when we are talking about a passive conference per se. And I was absolutely thrilled to look at the number of people who were attending this conference. It was unbelievable. I mean, I never thought so many people would be attending this conference, especially with the passive as the conference theme. See, I believe Cafe Mutual has always been delivering cutting edge content. Okay, and when I say cutting edge, it definitely helps us to think ahead in the right direction. And these are two very important things. One is thinking ahead, thinking in the right direction. And it definitely adds value whether you are in a 1 year or a 2 year practice, or you are in a 3 decades of practice. I've seen that cutting edge content of Cafe Mutual is absolutely outstanding. And I believe that is a very reason why I see so many people attending this event as well.